Hi everyone, welcome back to SmugMug Live. Thank you so much for joining us today, wherever you are in the world. You're more than welcome to be here on what is episode 56. And I'm really looking forward to the conversation I'm going to have today with our guest. As always, wherever you're joining us from, do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell notification. That way you will be notified whenever we release another episode here on SmugMug Live. And as always, the show is brought to you by SmugMug and Flickr. If you're looking for somewhere to host your images online, showcase your images, share them, store them in the cloud, sell those images to your customers and clients, then check out everything we have to offer at smugmug.com. And if you're looking to be part of an incredible photo community, then please check out everything we have to offer at flickr.com. I see lots of you popping into the chat window already, which is super exciting. As always, let us know where you're joining from. It's always nice to see who's joining us today on the live stream. So give yourself a shout out in that chat stream. That way we'll know you're all there and everything's streaming fine. And yeah, it'll be good to see how many people join us today for what will be a really fun conversation, I am sure. This is the only episode we're doing this week in the US. The company is celebrating Thanksgiving on Thursday, so no show this Thursday. But we'll be back next week with a show on Tuesday and Thursday next week. So without further ado, let's head on over to the chicken shed, as it's known. That will be explained later. And we'll say hello to my dear friend, see if he's there, Danny Lenihan. Hi, Danny. How are you?
I'm very well, mate. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, it's jolly exciting. Excuse the pun.
No pun intended. I'm sure we'll get some jolly jokes today from you.
No.
I got told not to do this with you. You know that?
Who told you? Everyone.
In fact, your team at Three-Legged Thing actually posted on social something like, "Can you believe they're letting the boss go live?"
So did Simon. I saw Simon posted something up last night on Facebook about that.
He did. I'm hoping Simon joins us. If you're there, Simon, give yourself a shout out in the chat window. It'd be good to see you.
About
6 a.m.
6 o'clock in the morning,
in Australia. A good friend of ours we're talking about there. If he pops in, we'll give him a shout out. Before you and I start having a conversation, let's see who is joining us today, just to see the global audience we've got. John Brown is joining us from Dog Pound. John's always on the show. Good to see you, John. Thanks for joining.
What an awesome name for a place. Dog Pound.
Yeah, I keep telling him I want to go to Dog Pound and see, and you know,
I've been to Alberta as well. I've not Dog Pound's amazing. It's a place I want to go to just because it's called that.
Yeah, I keep telling him that. And Cat Pound, that sounds even better. But anyway, Kashish is joining us from India. How are you doing? Something Good is joining us from Thailand. Well, there you go. Michelle Goldfarb is joining us from New Orleans in LA.
I'd love to go to New Orleans.
Yeah, it'd be great. JP is joining us from Finland. Hey, JP, good to see you. Don O'Reilly is in Northern Colorado. The sun's out, the snow's melting. Yeah. Colorado, great part of the world. And we'll give...
Beautiful place.
We'll give others a shout out as we go on. Keep those comments coming. At any point while I'm talking to Danny today, you're more than welcome to throw those questions in that chat window, and I will do my best to feed those to Danny, and he says nothing's off limits. So
did I say that?
No.
Did I?
No, I don't know. But let's get started. Danny is a dear friend of mine that I've known for more years than I care to remember. And we were having a little chat off air about trying to remember how we actually met. And we can't really pinpoint the first time we met, but we've seen each other all over the world, dude?
Yeah, the weird thing for me with you, Alastair, is that, I mean, we must live, 300 miles apart in different countries.
Not far enough.
But I see you more often, COVID allowing, than most of my sort of really good friends from London when, obviously I live up in the Shires now. But I see them a couple of times a year and go and hang out and have a few beers in Kingston and whatever else. But you, like, I don't think I've been to a trade show since 2010, 2012 maybe. No, probably 2010.
Oh,
You there?
lost your audio for a second there.
Oh, why have you lost my audio?
Oh, it's back. It just glitched ever so slightly. Sorry.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like you're muting me deliberately.
You suddenly went out of sync as well for some reason.
There's a weird thing coming where your voice keeps coming out of my computer. Let me just fix that so that we don't have any more technical issues. We've been sorting this out all afternoon so that this doesn't happen.
We've been doing all the technical stuff earlier before the show went live to make sure it was perfect, and then the live gods have issues with us as soon as we go live. It's always the way going live. So I don't know why your syncs went out though.
No, there's an issue. Let me find which one's the power and which one's going to the Roadcaster. I've got an issue.
Let's see who else is there. Let's see. Now your sync's still really bad. What I'm going to do is get you to hang up very quickly. I'm going to get you to dial back in, but make sure you hang up on your end and then dial back in.
All right, I'll figure that out.
Yeah, we'll let Danny...
I haven't changed anything here. I was just talking.
Yeah, it might just be the internet's just put us out of sync slightly, which it can do. There can be little glitches, but it can just be the internet as we go live. Yeah, we'll talk about you while you're gone. It's fine. Right, I'll kick him out just now. Those of you that have watched this show before, you'll be familiar with the technical difficulties we can have when the show goes live. But we'll see if this fixes it. So there we go. He's back.
You're back in my headphones. What happened?
Excellent. I don't know. Technical glitch, the modern world we live in. But you were saying before we were rudely interrupted by sync issues that, yeah, we've known each other since about 2012, seen each other all around the world at various trade shows.
Yeah, it's mostly, I mean, I think every Photokina we've had a drink together. We've done most of the CESs in Vegas and SWPPs and
photography show in the UK.
Photography show, yeah.
All
Imaging
over.
USA, PPE New York. Yeah, it's amazing. So I get to see you more than I see most of my really good long-time friends.
Yeah, lucky them, man.
It's disappointing for me, obviously.
Yeah.
No, for you.
No, it's good.
No, it's good. We have a good time, don't we?
Yeah, and we've got to know each other, and we have a lot in common, including our ages, which we discovered very early on that we were the same age. I couldn't believe someone as old looking as you is the same age as me.
I know, it's amazing. Yeah. I actually had a shave today because I was starting to look like a sort of aging Robinson Crusoe. It was just like I've already got a lockdown haircut because they announced the second lockdown and I couldn't be asked to get to the hairdressers. So I've got a bit of a Play-Doh mop top hair shop thing going on over here, which I can't do anything with. But the grey is kicking in.
I'm jealous about that.
Oh, yeah. See, I've never seen you without a hat on either. I remember actually about 3 years ago, I didn't even realize that you were bald.
I'm bald?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I actually mostly do this show without a hat, but I thought I'd wear one tonight just for you. Listen, we're going to be boring the pants off people who are tuning in to learn a little bit more about the man behind Three-Legged Thing. And obviously, as we say, seen each other at trade shows around the world and at events. I've visited you at your premises for Three-Legged Thing, and most people will know you nowadays as the founder and CEO of Three-Legged Thing. But we're not going to start with Three-Legged Thing conversation. I think we'll go back and we'll hear a little bit more about the journey that Danny has taken to get to this point, because you've reinvented yourself a few times along the way, I think.
I've lived a full life. Let's put it like that. I'm not one that's ever really played very nicely with meaningful employment. So I've switched careers a couple of times, and actually I'm one of those people that if I've wanted something, I've just made sure I've gone out and got it, and it has taken me down a bit of a strange path. Yeah.
Strange. Is that how you describe it? Strange, weird and wonderful. There's some fun photographs coming up any moment now.
I dread to think what's coming first.
Well, you did me a huge favor by you actually have a personal website that you share all this stuff publicly. I'm just going to broadcast it.
Only because nobody else goes on it. You're like the only visitor this year.
It's called research. This is when I'm producing the shows, I do some research. Some people call it stalking, but it's research. I need to throw this first picture up here because this is a doozy, as they say. And I think this is a picture of someone who went by the name of Danny James. Would that be right?
Well, that was my. Oh God, no. Daniel James. Yeah, Danny James was my stage name when I was doing comedy. That's hilarious. That's the most ironically accurate headline in the history of newspaper headlines. Because
you had more than one hit?
No, I never had a hit. It's absolutely correct. I never had one hit ever. I was determined. I did a Channel 4 show about this as well. I don't know what led to the fact that suddenly the Surrey Comet, I think that was, and Channel 4. I just ended up on people's radars, but I was working quite hard on an album and I ran out of money and I had this amazing show class VW Beetle. It's like a 77 Beetle and it was all lowered, Bernard Newbury interior. It had Max Camber wheels. It was a soft top, custom spray job, chrome doghouse engine covers and stuff like that, and I ended up selling it, and I sold it. I did a TV show called Deals on Wheels for Channel 4, and it's tragic. My friends bring it up every year because there's the early 90s. I was 23, 24, something like that, and the fashion sense that I was going through was horrendous. I mean that picture there. I think my girlfriend at the time was like, "You need some guy liner." And I was like, I do? Yeah, you've got to look like a rock star. And that shoot was done. And then the Surrey Comet used that. And wow. There was a worse one. One of the other papers decided they sent a photographer out. And I wish I'd been a bit more assertive back then, because obviously I knew photography. Mm-hmm. And he made me climb up a tree and I had a shaved head with a tuft here.
As you do.
And I was wearing black pinstripe trousers, a white wife beater vest, and I think an orange shirt over the top. I mean, it's the 90s, it was allowed back then. Apparently it looked quite cool.
Thought you were so cool back then. So
I was much cooler in the skateboard days. That was all right.
Well, skateboarding's something that's kind of traveled with you through your life. Skateboarding's a huge part of your life and has influenced decisions you've made all through your various careers. But you're trying to like move me away from this photograph of you hiding behind a guitar, and I'm not going to fall for it. So here's you with your guy liner on, holding your top of the range Washburn guitar. And you never had a hit, but what were you playing? What kind of music were you playing at this point?
Well, I didn't have a hit then, so I got a bit sucked into the pop scene, which is completely. It's hard to explain why, but because I'm a metalhead. I mean, my brother bought me a Kind of Magic when I was 15, and I'd been to see Queen. Must have been the year before that with my uncle. He'd taken me to Nebworth Park to see Queen, the Kind of Magic tour. So my brother bought me the album, and I just fell in love with rock music. I was totally into Iron Maiden and Def Leppard and a bit of Bon Jovi, and then some of the heavier stuff, the Panteras, the Sepulturas, the Skid Row, Slayer, Onslaught, those sorts of things. Yeah. And I found I had a girlfriend that was a pop singer, and she was recording out of a studio in Hammersmith at the time, and she was doing some stuff for one of the publishing houses. I think it was BMG Arista. And so I started writing songs that might be okay for her, and she had absolutely no interest in listening to anything that I wanted to play to her, nor giving it to her bosses, so that they might hear the sort of things I write. So I started just writing it for myself, and I can't sing. That's the worst thing. But I managed to. I remember selling that car, and I went to a studio in South Woodford in London, and just recorded 3 tracks Had a great producer whose name escapes me, but it kind of kicked on from there, and nothing happened until probably about 97, 98, where I met Penny, Tovey and Glenn. We started a band called Baby Wax, and we were making some proper trip hop, breakbeat, bouncing trance, that kind of stuff. And it was all written on a guitar. It was all written with those kind of rock riffs in mind, and then turned into more commercially sort of bouncy, sort of rock dance kind of stuff, which was pretty cool. And we did okay. We had a record deal with N2 Records, which was a sister label to the one that Louis Redknapp was on. So I was with them for a couple of years, and that we did release a single onto the cover of the Daily Star. 1.15 million copies were thrown away from the cover of that.
A free giveaway.
Newspaper. Yeah. So we were on that. They even did a vote as to which song was the best on it. I think we came third, and there were only 7. So
I thought you were going to say there's only 3.
I do aspire to the occasional flashes of mediocrity.
Yeah, I hunted high and low. I was on every streaming platform.
I took it all down,
trying to find a piece of music to play. I probably wouldn't have been able to play it on YouTube. They'd probably strike me off or something. But I did try.
No, you could have asked me. I could have sent you something.
Wanted it to be a surprise, but I think the biggest surprise for me is the fact that you're saying it was, techno, poppy house kind of stuff. When
actually, there is a site. If you go to SoundCloud, if you go to SoundCloud, there's probably 3 singles on that. Yeah, I sent you a link to my. I did a stand-up comedy set at the Comedy Store in 2005, which is recorded on SoundCloud, and I think 3 or 4 of my singles on there. You just didn't look hard enough, mate. You can find that picture, but you can't find a publicly available.
This is publicly available. You posted this at DannyLenihan.com if anybody's interested. What was the band called that you released?
Baby Wax.
Baby Wax. So there you go. Go search for Baby Wax on SoundCloud and see if you can find some of that.
You'll probably find it underneath my name, actually, rather than, I don't know if it's posted up as Baby Wax. It's probably Danny Lenihan.
Yeah, as I say, just knowing how much of a metalhead you are. I mean, we've talked long about our mutual love of Iron Maiden and all those guys. So to hear you being part of Baby Wax,
I remember sitting in a pub in Cologne with you and Cologne, with some of the guys from Blonde Robot. I think Andy and Christy were there, and singing the Bohemian Rhapsody at the top of our voices, pissed, at about midnight.
I remember that.
In that really weird pub that's got those sort of puppets, that puppet band in the corner.
Middle of Cologne, just off the square from the cathedral.
It's like Peter's Brauhaus or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah. We sang the entire Bohemian Rhapsody.
Whole
perfect for and we thought it was so much fun and cool, but I bet you anybody looking on were thinking...
No, we got a whole pub singing it along with us, because it wasn't on the radio or anything, was it? I think we just started singing it, and everybody just joined in. Yeah.
Fun times. Remember when you could do that? You could go to bars and hang out and drink together and stuff. There was fun times. But that was probably back 2012, something like that. It was a long time ago. But
it's definitely a few years back.
But fun times. So moving on from music, when did you and why and how did you get into photography?
Oh, that was a complete accident. So I as a school kid, I had a bit of a proclivity to exams, to taking exams. I was quite good at exams, but they changed O-levels to GCSEs the year, I think we were the first year that did them, either the first or the second year they did GCSEs to 90% coursework, and school just wasn't challenging for me. It was just I didn't want to be there. So I breezed through all the exams at the end, aced all of the final exams and stuff like that, and then failed all of my GCSEs because I didn't do any of the work. So I've been shipped off to KCFE, as it was that back then, Kingston College of Further Education, to retake my GCSEs, and I had to take a couple more with it. And I was quite into my art and design, so I chose art and design, and one of the modules in that was photography.
Right.
And I think somebody handed me a Pentax K1000 with a 50mm 2.8 lens on it and a roll of probably HP5, something like that, and sent me off into I did a GCSE in music too, in rock music appreciation. So imagine that, getting a qualification in listening to songs.
Can you
I
do
was
that?
epic at it. Took about
You
8
were
stars.
really good at that.
Yeah. So
your audio's gone again for some reason, out of sync.
You're coming out of my computer again. I don't.
The
It's a bit of a
interweb.
Wi-Fi thing.
It's always a Wi-Fi thing.
So yeah, I was doing art at Kingston College, and one of the modules was photography, and I just, as soon as I stepped into a dark room for the first time with a bunch of pictures that I had no idea how to take, that I'd taken, and got the little Patterson tank and a spiral, and back then, like, they didn't have the dark bag, so you know, you couldn't sit in a normal room with your hands inside a bag and winding it all on. You went inside a light tight room and learned to put it on. So I was there for, you know, it was 1 year college thing, so it was 7 or 8 months, and I went straight to Nescott in West Shores, just south of Epsom, to do photography as a diploma, and I loved it. I mean, I did a year there, and then went back for my second year, and then they told me I'd failed because I hadn't done any of the coursework. They sent me a letter saying that you well done. We look forward to seeing you next year. I turn up and they were like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Well, I got this letter." And they went, "Oh, that was a mistake." Can you imagine if that happened now?
That was a mistake.
And
You failed.
Like,
you suck.
What do you mean it was a mistake? Yeah, they just went, "Well, you just didn't. You know, you're obviously competent. You just didn't do any of the work." And they're right. I didn't. I mean, I think I took my frustrations out on them at the time. But I'd done some work experience with London News Service. I'd sort of blagged my way into one of the London agencies, the press agencies, because I really liked the idea. One of the other guys that was on the course in the year above me was a very talented photographer, and he was doing stuff for Time Out and a couple of the other sort of big name mags that are in London. And he introduced me to somebody else who introduced me to London News Service, and I you know, went to do this work experience with them, and I was there for about 3 weeks or something like that. And as soon as I went back to college and realized I didn't have a place, they sent me back to the first year again, and I let that ride for about 2 months, and I went, no, I'm not doing this. And I just upped and went to London News Service to work for them. And they basically said to me, look, we're not paying you a salary. We'll do you 50-50 on the pictures. So anything we syndicate or send out to the mags, we'll send you the work. You know, we'll give you all the film, and they've got labs there, so you don't have to process your own stuff. You just hand it back in or bike it back into the thing. And it was great. I mean, I was doing football matches. I was doing lots of news stuff, did a lot of the Royals, had an amazing, I got a great story about actually Princess Diana, funny enough.
It's
when
very
she went
topical at the moment, apparently.
Well, it is. It's weird actually, because a couple of people have asked me about that since obviously I used to photograph her quite a lot. But there was a kind of period for about 3 weeks. I can't remember what year this is. I suspect it's 94-ish, something like that, where she just vanished for a period of time. Like nobody could see her to take pictures. It must have been a month or so, and you know, she was in the news all the time and
every day.
And a bunch of us camped outside Kensington Palace, and I must have camped out every day for about 3 weeks, knowing that, you know, that I wasn't earning any money while I was stood there, but I knew if I got a shot, it was going to be worth it.
Yeah.
And as you know, as the weeks sort of wore on, the crowd of photographers there dwindled down quite significantly until it was just me. And on I think the Thursday or Friday of the third week, she just came out. She had a green Rover, obviously had a driver, bodyguard driver at the time, and she pulled up, wound down the window, said hello, asked me if I wanted to do the usual drive-by shots, backed up the car a little bit, let me run along it's all, half of it back then was just set up. And I phoned everybody, and I was like, I've got to die. And they were like, oh my God, send us. And I had the Sun asking me for exclusives and the Mirror asking for exclusives, and just people calling me just saying, get me these pictures. And so I legged it to the nearest kind of, it was like a Snappy Snaps or something like that, pulled out my dev kit, dev'd it there and then, and tried to Mac it over. I mean, it would have taken me, because of London traffic, it probably would have taken me 45 minutes an hour to get back to the agency, and then they'd have to process it and then get it sent out. So I figured it was easier to get it done there and then and mack it across. And in the time that I did that, she turned up at the gym in Chelsea and flipped the middle finger to Dave Bennett, who's one of the biggest names in the press circle.
Yeah. And that just took the lead, and you lost.
But by the time I phoned everybody and said, "Okay, the pictures are coming across," they were like, "Nah, forget it. She's just stuck the middle finger up at something." I couldn't believe it. So, yeah.
And if only you'd had digital, you could have just sent it.
Imagine back then. They just got. I mean, I remember when the agency first got Photoshop. I'd done a football match at Highbury, I think it was actually, and hilariously, I'd gone back to London News Service or Barrett's Photo Press. They had two agencies within there to put the shots in. We were scanning them into this new Kodak scanner thing, which I'd never seen before, and then it was coming up on screen. And one of the shots I got was, I can't even remember the play now, but he was heading the ball into the goal, except that the ball was in the goal, and they wanted the ball to be in the air, sort of traveling towards the goal. So they pulled up another picture and cut the ball out and pasted it into this thing. But see, nowadays you can isolate stuff like that at pixel level. And back then, a pixel was about 4 inches. And so they'd literally cut out this massive area of the crowd and just stuck it. We look at it going, you can't tell. You can't look at it.
Nobody will ever know.
It's incredible. And then, because it's printed in all the back pages the next day. And I'm just looking at it thinking, that is what a bit of software that is. Can you tell? Can you? And it was like the same bloke 6 times, just sort of pasted where they cut and pasted in over the top of stuff. It was very funny.
What we thought was acceptable back then. So it's funny you should mention, your work with the press and especially football, because I have another photograph to share. Let's see. Let's get this one up. This one is. Fortunately, you're circled in red here, so we can tell which one it is. This was a huge moment in British football history, or the kind of aftermath of a huge moment. This is Eric Cantona, who some point before this photograph had a brain fart and decided to jump at a fan in the stadium and like do a flying karate kick at a fan in the stadium, and everybody thought it was like the end of his career and like whatever. But you then got involved in the press scrum.
Well, actually, I was at the match, so it was at Selhurst Park, and it's interesting because there was a bit of a sort of unwritten protocol when you were shooting football, in that I'd have a driver, I'd have a bike sat behind me, he'd be sat on his helmet waiting for him to hand over a load of films so that he could run it back to the agency. And it was a bit of an unwritten rule that you didn't send your bike early. Everybody got the chances to get their pictures out at the same time, and I'm sure that on many occasions people sent their bikes off early, but I can't remember when he got the red card. Yeah, it's just one of those sort of, yeah. And I was on the opposite side of the pitch to where he did the karate kick, not kid. That'd be hilarious if he was in that. Cantona-san. So I was on the opposite side of the pitch, so not the best view of the actual incident, but I missed the red card because I decided that I had about 4 or 5 rolls of film, and I just decided to send my bike early. And I think we were getting towards the back end of the match, and I thought, do you know what? I can just drive back the last sort of 4 or 5 rolls on my own. But they've got enough. Nothing had happened. It was a bit of a crap match, actually. And so I knew that there was no real rush for the pictures. I mean, everybody wants a bit of a file pick, something like that. So the chances of the agency getting them out early and picking up a couple was pretty high if I sent the bike early. So I did. And literally about 30 seconds after I'd called him over, because he was sat 20 yards behind me, I'd emptied my cameras of film and gone and handed it to him. And he'd started walking away. And that's when Cantona got the red card. And of course, every other photographer in the stadium just went and just, got pictures of him getting this red card. And so I'm calling my bike back and going, just get back. And desperately trying to load up my cameras. And at the point when he did the karate kick, everybody else's cameras were empty.
Yep.
Because they were handed off to because they got the red card shot. There was me and a couple of other photographers actually had 2 cameras were filming, and I started shooting. And because my bike was ready to go, and like he'd already got up, he'd got his helmet on, his gloves ready to go, and I'd given him a bag full of film already. As soon as I got that shot, I gave the films to him and sent him off to the agency and phoned the agency and told them what had happened. And I think I had 17 front pages the next day, except that my shot wasn't great. It wasn't at a great angle. It was a bit fuzzy. It wasn't massively in focus because if I was to describe myself for anything in life, it's mediocre. And as a photographer, that certainly applies. And a couple of other guys who were on the right side of the pitch got absolutely amazing shots. So when they started printing 2nd and 3rd editions as they did back then, my shots were just went away.
Yeah, but you got 17 front pages. And for anybody that isn't familiar, especially if you're probably joining from other parts of the world, in the UK, Eric Cantona got a red card. I can't even remember what for. And then as he was leaving the pitch,
I've got a sound effect for that. Sorry, that's from a rugby match, but I had that one for you.
You had that queued up there.
Yeah,
as he was walking off the pitch after being sent off, the crowd were shouting abuse at him, and he just lost it and took this flying karate kick into the front seats of the stadium and connected with some poor young kid right in the face.
Right in the chest. It was an amazing shot. Was it the face? Yeah, it was. It was a proper full-on flying kick.
Yeah,
and that picture that you showed then. Yeah. That picture you showed then was from the FA hearing at the Stockwell House Hotel in St Albans. And I got there dead early. What you can't see is to the right of me, so behind that crappy ponytail that I've got, is the door into the actual hotel where the FA hearing was. And because I was there first, I parked myself by the door. I thought, I'm getting the shot no matter what happens. This is because I was still very young back then. And I was quite prone to getting kicked out of press pens by these guys who've been doing it for a long time, who took no prisoners when it came to that sort of stuff. And I remember being there from like 4 o'clock in the morning, freezing my nuts off, getting ready. The whole thing was over in like 30 seconds. I jumped to St Albans, macked the shots over to the agency and went home. And the following morning, I got a phone call from my picture editor at London News. It's quite early, and he phoned me up. He said, "How is it you managed to get a picture that we sold many times over and syndicated worldwide without actually looking through your camera?" And I was like, "Boss, of course I was looking through. Not a blagger. I mean, age 48, independent." Hung the phone up. So I legged it to the local corner store, grabbed it, opened it up, and there I am, not even looking, just chimping the shot, holding it over the top of the crowd and going trigger happy, and literally just followed it. Like I said, the whole thing was over in about 30 seconds. Got him and Sir Alec Ferguson.
Was this were you shooting digital at this point?
No, that's an FM2.
Yeah, so because you're not
again, haven't you?
Yeah, you have. Why don't you dive out very quickly and dive back in again? We'll fix it. We'll let him join momentarily because he said he was chimping there, but of course he wasn't chimping because he didn't even have a screen on the back of his camera. So I'm just saying to everybody, you described that as chimping, but you couldn't have been chimping because it wasn't digital.
No, but I mean, I know that's what they call it these days with digital. They call it chimping, but I'm literally holding the camera up and just shooting. I'm sorry about the internet. The problem with working in a chicken shed is everything is a bit of a bodge job. I've been here 12 years, and it's kind of like the bastard love child of Frankenstein and some sort of deformed robot. The changes that have been made to this building. We're building a massive shed down the bottom of the farm at the moment, which we're moving into in January for the warehouse.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah, and then moving the offices to another shed while we refurb this one up. So big changes in store.
Excellent. We'll talk about the chicken shed and the three-legged thing very shortly.
Sure.
We'll get there, but let's get back to the ponytail because you briefly mentioned it, but
It's not the worst picture of me with a ponytail. You've seen my Facebook feed. There's plenty of shots in there that are just more tragic.
How much did you enjoy that whole press photography world? And because it can be pretty stressful, it can be pretty unlucrative.
I love the football. I loved doing the football because I was just passionate about football, and I love sitting there and watching the game and taking shots. And none of my shots were any good, probably because I was watching the game. I was not a fan of doorstepping. I mean, I did quite a lot of. I didn't really do papping. There was quite a few. I mentioned Dave Bennett. There's a couple of others. Dave Cheskin that did a lot of papping. They'd sort of camp themselves out at Lorenzo's in Knightsbridge, hoping to catch, some celebrity turning up or princess dying or whatever else. I did a lot of court cases, which I didn't. You just spend a lot of time sat there. That's the problem with. I've got a friend, Leon Neal, who's a fantastic photographer who works for Getty now. And he's an immeasurable talent. He's so much better than I ever was or will ever be with a camera. And he thrives on it. He loves that. And I didn't. I really didn't. And I probably didn't put as much effort into it as I should have done. But when the action was happening, I was there. I was, the camera's up, taking shots. And I quite like the kind of, you rub shoulders with a few celebrities here and there, and you get to have a chat. With chatting to Princess Di is quite humbling. Looking back on it, it's quite an amazing experience. That when you think about her legacy and the kind of person she was, and there was not just her. There's lots of kind of well-respected names back then that I loved taking photographs of, however briefly they were in front of you. But as a whole, I wasn't in love with it as an occupation. And when Diana died, it got a bit tasty in London. Actually, it was difficult to walk around with cameras and a Billingham bag slung off your back, and cameras swinging around. People just weren't happy with the press. They weren't happy with what had happened. It was the People's Princess had been taken away from them, and there was certainly a few punches thrown in the direction of a lot of the press corps back then. So that's when I got out.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of people taking their
rightly
pain,
so.
and, their
look,
pain and
she
their
was
anger
chased by a bunch of photographers, and actually, unfortunately, the digitization and social media, the internet, and everything has just massively exacerbated that. I mean, it's now
hasn't got any better. It's a lot. 10
it's
times
got
worse.
a lot worse now. Yeah, because it's instant gratification now as well. It's not even news for a week; it's news for a minute.
Yeah, so you need to be constantly hounding these people because you need something new every day. But so it was an interesting time. But photography, you stayed with photography for quite a while, and we'll come back to some of your photography. But you also then had another career where you got into trying to be funny for a living. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I had a bit of a falling in love with the stage. When I left London News Service, and I'd been shooting some stuff for MTV, been doing some stuff for them, and I had an opportunity to go and work with them for a while. And then I did a season at Weymouth Bay. What was it? It was a Haven holiday park. So I was a Haven mate, stripy,
You had the
jacket,
blazer.
and it was like a proper classic Heidi High type thing.
Yeah.
And I was part of the Ents team there. I was actually one of the vocalists there. But I started we were doing our own shows and we were putting together our own productions. And I started doing bits of comedy within that. Like there were lots of comedians coming to the holiday camps, and I was watching them just thinking, I'd love that. Just stood up there, people laughing at you. It's an amazing experience. And so I just started writing. I started doing bits and pieces around different holiday camps. I couldn't really earn a living doing it. I ended up working for TGI Fridays for about 4 years, throwing bottles around and delivering food and all of that sort of stuff.
Just to make a living.
And yeah, I mean, look, that's, I mean, there were photographers doing that, not just people that were in the entertainment industry. It was just trying to scrape together a living back then. And so I was doing a bit more comedy here and there, and then I started moving into what they called the alternative circuit, which doesn't exist anymore. It's the only circuit there is. There used to be the mainstream circuit, which was all your kind of your big names that were on telly and doing the Royal Variety Performance and doing the holiday camps, and they get paid loads.
Yeah.
And then you had the alternative circuit, which was your observational comics. In the early days of that, you got the likes of Lee Evans and Jack D and Eddie Izzard and those kind of people. And I started doing some stuff on that circuit, and I just relished it. I absolutely loved it. I was crap, but I managed to scrape a living for about 14 years doing that.
Were you not mediocre at that as well?
Yeah, everything in life. No, I mean, I turned pro as a comic in 2001, I think, and then spent. Oh, there's a nice picture of me, and that's 2007. That's at Baby Blue in Liverpool. That was one of my tours. I was up in Liverpool, and I used to compare a lot for the likes of jonglers, and I think one of my greatest ever moments in my life that I'll always cherish is my very first time stepping onto the stage at the Comedy Store in London, because that was really the holy grail. That was the hallowed ground. If you could get on stage at the Comedy Store, and it was no mean feat to get on there. I mean, you had to really keep pushing and getting funnier and getting people to see you and getting agents to book you and things like that. And I managed to get a 10 spot or 5 spot. It must have been my first time at the Comedy Store. And that was, I remember that night because it's the night that Gareth Gates versus Will Young in the final of the first Pop Idol. And Mark Billingham, so the famed author Mark Billingham, who's done all those crime novels, he was the compere that night at the Comedy Store. He was comparing the show, and I remember him just sort of pat me on the back, going, "It's going to be fine. You're going to be rubbish. You're going to love it. We're going to carry on." But he kept popping in, like in between, introducing different acts. He'd come in and go, "Who's won? Is Will won? Is Will?" He was
so interested in the pop
That's
stars.
the only thing he cared about was whether or not Will Young won Pop Idol. It was. I mean, I remember that experience greatly, and it taught me a lot about the funny thing about the Comedy Store. People used to say to me, "Isn't that a brutal job? Like, how difficult is it to get on stage and be funny? And like, how intimidating is it doing the Comedy Store?" And I tell you what. The worst thing about the Comedy Store is sitting in that green room, waiting to get your name called. Because not once you're in, like once you're doing it regularly, every 6 or 8 weeks, you're there doing a weekend or whatever. I'd still get nervous because it's the Comedy Store, but it becomes part of your natural routine. And I always said the day I stop getting nervous before I walk on stage is the day I've stopped caring. That's the time for me to walk away from it. But I used to beat myself up before I'd puke. I'd be in the green room and puke. And I just remember you walk on stage and you forget there's 450 people there that have paid 30 quid to laugh. They want to laugh. It's the easiest gig ever. Yeah. If you're going into comedy nowadays, a little tip for anybody that's going into comedy, you go to one of these big clubs like the Comedy Stores, Caroline's in New York, those sorts of places. These people have paid big money to laugh. They will just laugh. You don't need to be nervous. The gigs that used to make me nervous were the ones where you got 50 or 60 people and, in the arse end of nowhere, and you can literally walk on stage. And if you don't get them in the first 15 seconds, die in your arsehole.
Yeah. No, it's painful. I
have died finer deaths than Nelson, and nobody kissed me on the way down. Honestly,
I can only imagine dying on stage is a little bit like doing a live show where your internet craps out or something happens.
Or the sound keeps going, yeah.
Or the sound keeps going. I did a live stream. They're all becoming one. Every show bleeds into the other at this point. But I did a show a month or so ago with John Rourke, who is a...
it's one of our pros.
One of your pro team. He's also a SmugMug ambassador as well as an ambassador for Three-Legged Thing.
Nice bloke as well.
Wonderful bloke. Came on here talking about his motorsport photography with FIA and all that type of stuff. And we've been desperate to have John on the show for so long. And he doesn't enjoy, it's not his native environment being live on air. So it took a bit of convincing. As soon as he turned on, everything crapped out. Like the internet went down, his stream failed, he couldn't get anything to work, he was sweating like you wouldn't believe. And then I had like periods of, I think there was about 20 minutes where I just had to monologue for 20 minutes while John rebooted his entire system, tried to dial back in. So I know what those moments are like when you're just dying. And it's interesting, you talk about at a comedy gig, people are ready to laugh, so it's easier. So did you also do gigs where people were there maybe for some other event and you were just part of the entertainment or something like that?
You do that in the early days. I mean, if I did corporate, I remember doing a corporate for IBM, there was like 3,000 people there, and actually they booked me and David Baddiel.
Mm-hmm.
And they were so pissed up by the time it was time for David Baddiel walked in, he went, "I'm going first." And I was like, well, that's not really how it works, mate. You're the headliner. I do 10 minutes, do a bit of hosting and introduction to the CEO and whatever else, and then bring you on and you do your bit. And he went, "I'm going first." And I was like, "All right, David." And he walked on stage, and the guys in the audience were just absolute arseholes. They were so drunk, and they were just being rowdy, and they weren't, and they were just shouting stuff at him. They were being pretty unpleasant, actually. And he just looked at me and said, "Do you want me to go?" And they all went, "Yeah." And he went, "All right, I'll take my 15 grand and I'll go." And he did, and just left me there. So the CEO's rushed in. He's gone, "You need to save the gig." I'm like, David Baddiel just left, and you want me to save the gig? So I did exactly what we did in Cologne. And I walked to the stage and started singing the Bohemian Rhapsody. Got 3,000 pissed up IBM employees to sing the Bohemian Rhapsody till right to the very end. Got a standing ovation, walked away.
That's how to do it. If you're going to do it. There goes your audio again. It's funny. There's a little glitch just every time before it goes. So I'm going to throw you out. Bye.
Yeah.
And he'll dial back in. Of course, while you're listening to us chat, if you have any questions for Danny, post those in the chat window, and we will get to those questions whenever we stop talking about a load of nonsense. But yeah, post those questions in the chat window, and we will get to them as soon as we can. I think Danny's back with us now. Can you hear us?
See, yes, I heard you talking about the questions too.
Got this down to a whole delay. Got this down to fine art now, getting you in and out there. So we've got quite a number of folk tuned in over the last 40 minutes as we've been talking. And if you've got questions, then post them in.
40 minutes of your life you won't get back.
Yeah, but let's go back to some of your photography. So how long before that, let's finish on the comedy. How long did you do comedy for, and do you still do it ever?
No, so I did comedy until my first child was born in 2009. I was 36, and I spent the next year touring, and actually I just wanted to get home to my daughter. That's what I wanted to do, and that's when I realized that I needed to just stop touring, stop working in it. And I'd been doing some stuff over the previous 4 or 5 years, selling photographic equipment on eBay, because it's the only stuff that I really knew. And I'd built that up to a decent, pretty significant business. And so actually leaving the comedy didn't leave me financially bereft. In fact, quite the opposite. The business was going well enough that as soon as I put a bit more time and effort into it, it just thrived. So that was fun. I did miss it. I'd still do a comedy podcast now. I have a podcast called Faces for Radio, which we haven't done very much this year because of obvious reasons. There's like one episode of season 4 up there. It's very childish. Me and 2 of my best mates just sit around in this room, just talking nonsense. Yeah.
It's a great title. It's very appropriate.
Faces for Radio. Yeah. True story.
Speaking of a face for radio, and I'll let you plug all your stuff at the end, which is cool. But speaking of a face for radio, check that face out. Look at that one.
That was at the Kerrang Awards. That was I think that must have been 2016 or 2017. So I used to go and photograph Paul Harris. So Paul Harris is one of our pro team. Is a very well respected music photographer. Yeah, he's great. He's a really nice bloke as well, and he lives down in Teddington, which is my manor. I sort of grew up in the Kingston area of London, and he just to give me a call every year, saying, "I do the Kerrang Awards. Do you want to come along?" And he'd managed to get Kerrang to give me a pass to come and photograph him photographing the bands. And so I I mean, I didn't really work. I just used to hang around backstage, and I was chatting to Dan Hawkins from The Darkness, and he said you should do a selfie project with all these celebs. And I went, yeah, that's not a bad idea. He said, yeah, but not like a normal one. I want to be punching you in the head as you're taking the picture. And I went, all right, let's stage that. So I think I had that was my Fuji XT2, I think it is, and it's got this really wide 10 to 20 mil lens on it or something like that.
Yeah.
And I just held that out, looked shocked as he peeled back his hand ready to punch me. And that led on to a little project I did, and I actually ended up getting some quite big names. I got Marilyn Manson, Brian May, the girls from the Lounge Kittens, half of Steel Panther, Dynamo, the comedian, magician, magician, and loads of other people to like be launching
face.
Punches. Yeah. Francis Rossi.
Can I do one? You never asked me to punch you in the face.
Oh, you can just punch me in the face, mate. I'm all right with that. I'm down with that. I deserve it.
Yeah. So this is Paul Harris photographing here, right?
That's Paul on the left there. So this is I call this my Inception picture because that's me there. Yeah. And that's Biffy Clyro on the
great Scottish rock band, Biffy.
Biffy. You say great, but he's wearing a salmon pink suit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's horrendous. Really nice guys though.
Wonderful guys, and that's probably the most clothes they've ever worn in their life, because they're normally half naked when they're performing.
Oh, it's quite funny. So we were having quite a laugh during this one, and Mark Hoppus from Blink-182 is actually holding my phone and taking that picture. So I've got a picture. Right. I've got this picture, and I've also got the picture that I took of Mark Hoppus photographing me, photographing Paul, photographing Biffy Clyro, and I've got the picture of Paul photographing Biffy Clyro. So I've got this whole kind of Inception concept going on with all three of us shooting at the same time. But it was a fun night. That
don't cross the streams.
Exactly that. Yeah, back when I was a little bit more limber and my legs worked a bit better and I could climb on top of tables to take pictures.
It's not the first time I've seen you on top of a table, Danny.
Is it not? Are we going back to Cologne?
I think so.
This is quite recent. This is only this is probably about 2 or 3 years ago. There's a tunnel that links St Pancras to King's Cross, and it's always heaving. I mean, two of the biggest stations. I mean, St Pancras is an international station. You've got the Eurostar going in there,
and go to Paris from there.
And there's always and Brussels and Amsterdam, and there's like 1,000 people in there at any given moment. And I walked past this, the actual tunnel walks past, this tunnel is on the left-hand side, and it's always full. And I couldn't believe it. And I walked past, it was completely empty apart from this one guy who was sort of mopping the floor. And I just grabbed my camera out. I had to get that shot because I've never, ever seen it ever even close to that empty. And it was so beautifully lit.
Irony is that now, if you showed someone this picture, they'd say, oh, is that 2020 shot?
Yeah.
That's what it looks like now.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah,
it's a great bit of architecture, that as well. It's one of the things I love about London. I'm very proud of my hometown. I know I don't live there anymore, but it's all there for you. You can walk through London and there's something to photograph in every direction at any given time. Incredible city.
And then here's another photograph that you love, that is kind of you back at your roots.
Oh, this is Hamburg. So back when I was in sort of music biz, in the early days of me turning pro as a comic, and I was managing a band, or was trying to manage a band called Livingston. They're quite big now. They're based out in Germany. Very good friends of mine, great guys. And I did a movie which I think might be on Amazon Prime at the minute. I was in a couple of movies for a young English director called Pat Higgins, who did comedy horrors, and me and a bunch of other comedians did cameos, and I did a main part in a couple of his movies. And like I said, they're on Netflix or Prime or something like that. But I remember when I first met Livingston, I begged Pat, because we had an extra day on the set in Shoeburyness. We had this old converted warehouse doing this horror, this film called Trash House, and we had this amazing set built. I say amazing, I mean built quite badly because we did it. And I said to him, look, I've got this band. I want to bring them down and shoot a video, like, we've got all the gear here, we've got the warehouse, can we do it? And he went, yeah, that'd be great. So we brought the band over, and it was Livingston. They did a single called Broken by You, and we filmed it all, and we did the video and everything. And I was trying to get them signed to Sony Records. We did like a live event for Sony and a couple of other people. And actually, they ended up moving back to Germany. And then I didn't see them. I didn't see them for 3 or 4 years, probably a bit longer than that, actually. And this is, I think, 2016. My oldest friend, Ant, just phoned me up. He said, Livingston are playing a gig in Hamburg. Should we go? And I was like, yeah, let's do that. Let's fly to Germany and go and watch Livingston. And I hadn't seen them, like I said, for a few years, and walking in, just massive hugs. And they were like, oh my God, great to see you. And I had all my camera gear because I just carried it everywhere back then. And they said, would you shoot the show? And I went, yeah. And I probably took 1,000 pictures back with my D3Ss back then. But actually, of all of them, this was my favorite. And it's a bit obscure because it's not, I don't think it's not something I maybe consciously saw. But I do remember getting down into that corner of the stage, and I saw Jakob holding his guitar and sort of leaning towards the piano in the corner, and went, that's I want to shoot that. But I deliberately pulled down and got all of Chris's pedal sets and stuff like that, and threw them out of focus at the front. And it's just one of the favorite pictures I've ever taken. And I'm sure lots of people think that's probably total rubbish, and I'm happy to accept that, completely happy. It was just, for me, the light was so nice. Look at the tonal quality, that light that's coming in from behind Chris's legs on the left-hand side, the light that's near Jakob's head. It just all sort of fused together. And yeah, I just love that picture.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's a great moment, especially something about the way he's just holding the guitar so relaxed as he's playing left-handed there. The exposure's great.
It is the moment.
Great image, yeah. And
it's the moment you talk about the Henry Cartier. Sorry, I was going to just say the Henry Cartier-Bresson thing has been something that's been like pummeled into me since I did photography at college. And that's one of the reasons I did like doing press work, because it is all about capturing that moment. And I think, a second either side of this and that shot's gone.
Yeah. And the fact that you
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. It's the fact you had such personal connection with the band and kind of back with them after a little while photographing this. I can see how it really connects with you.
It was great to see them. Yeah, it was really good to see them.
Great photograph. Right, I'm going to see what we've got coming up next. So this next image, this is the Danny the Danny that I first got to know. And looking at this image, I'm assuming this is you with probably a mold or something for three-legged.
No. That's a billet of aluminium.
Oh, it's actually aluminium. So
yeah, that's T6061. That's like a aerospace grade. It's a 1.1% magnesium composite alloy.
See, he just goes straight into that mode there. Did you see him, folks? He turns straight into that, business owner of geekiness about the exact piece of product. So this is...
I love that as well. I love that about
sure
what we do. Is we are so geeky about it. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
We are all geeks when it comes to photographers mostly. But this is you now in the three-legged world part of your life. Tell us a little bit about what inspired you to become a tripod manufacturer.
Well, firstly, I just want to say thank you to Simon Pollock, who took that picture. Because despite my ever-increasing girth and the extra chins that are appearing and the crap haircut, he's actually made me look half decent there. So thank you, Simon. So the tripod thing was weird. I had a lighting company from 2005 to 2010 while I was doing comedy, and that was the kind of bread and butter stuff that I just did for 20 minutes a day on eBay. I was importing lights in from China. I mean, it didn't quite start like that. I started buying stuff on eBay secondhand and then selling it for a bit more. I started with, I think I was broke. I had a massive falling out with my agent, John Briley, back in 2004, and he stripped 6 months of gigs out of my diary, and I was broke. And I remember my girlfriend at the time, she did become my wife eventually, and now my ex-wife, saying to me, "You just got to get a job." And I had no money. I had like £7.50 in a PayPal account, and I was talking to River Island, I think, about working part-time for them at Lakeside Shopping Centre in Thurrock. I was just broke, and I ended up spending £7.50 on a light stand on eBay, and then, in fact, it was £7. I had £7.50 and I bought it for £7, and then I begged the guy to ship it to me for 50p. And he was not happy, to say the least, but it would have cost him more to relist it back those days. So he sent me this light stand, and then I sold it for £22. And then I bought something else. I can't remember what the second thing was, but I just kept doing that. And before you know it, I turned over 140 grand in 6 months. And it escalated so quickly. Like, I wasn't even aware that this was the level. And none of this money was in my pocket, because I was doing this sort of double down thing where you buy something and then you buy something with the proceeds from it. So I'd never actually put any of the money in my pocket. There's a great, I'll ask you a question, right? If I said to you, Alastair, I'll give you 5 million quid right now, or I'll give you a penny on January the 1st and I'll double it every day through the month, what would you take?
The doubling every time.
10.8 million penny every day for 31 days. You end up with 10.8 million pounds.
Yeah. And your audio's gone again. Let's.
Oh, sorry. Come on, kick me off and back on it. You can talk about me. You're more interesting.
Yeah, we'll talk about you. Sorry about that, but I think it's the quickest way to get good audio is to let him jump off and jump back on again. So he'll dial in any second. There he is. It's worth doing that just to get good audio.
Yeah, no, it is, definitely.
It's the whole thing about, the putting doubling the rice on a square of a chessboard.
Exactly that. It's compound interest is essentially what it is. And I'd started with £7.50 and built it to £140,000 in 6 months. And I couldn't quite comprehend how that had happened. And I got contacted by the old Jessops, not the new one, saying, look, we've seen you buying some of our lights on eBay. Do you want to buy them from us? And I was like, yeah, why not? They sent me a price list. I bought some lights and I undersold them. I was like underselling them by 40% on their own products. It was hilarious. I became the biggest Portaflash reseller in Europe for about 2 years, until they pulled the plug on me. But by that point, I'd found a manufacturer in China and started bringing in my own lights. The early ones that had sort of questionable quality. And the interesting thing was I was spending, I can't remember how much I was paying for the Portaflash lights, but I was selling them for £350 for a 3-head kit, so 3 lights, softbox, umbrella, whatever. And I bought these lights from China, and it was like $40 for the same amount of kit. I mean, obviously I had to ship it all across, and I bought 100 kits. And I said to my friend Tim, I'm gonna whack these on eBay for £100 a kit. Watch them; they're just gonna fly out the door. And I couldn't give them away. Nobody wanted them. And my best mate Tim, he sat me down. He said, "You're missing the principle of selling." And I said, "What's that?" He said, "Tell them they want it, and tell them how much they're going to pay for it. How much were you selling the Portaflash lights for?" And I went, 350 quid. And he said, "And has anybody heard of Portaflash?" And I went, "No." And he went, "Then why aren't you selling yours for 350 quid?" And I put them up to 350 quid, and they sold in 4 hours, the whole lot.
Yeah, people didn't trust them. They were too cheap.
Exactly that. It's bizarre. And it taught me a valuable lesson about business. And, I started to build that up, and we got to the point in about 2008 where I had a 13 pallet delivery arrive at my home in Turvey, and my wife went, "No." And I was like, "What?" She went, "No." So I ended up looking for a local premises, and I found this chicken shed on a farm in Stagsden. It was just a couple of miles from where I lived. It was 2,600 square foot. It was empty. They were going to build a couple of offices in there for me, and the moment I moved into here, and I had a proper supply chain, and I got somebody to come in and answer phones, do customer service, and somebody to come and pick and pack in the warehouse, it just grew.
Yeah,
like it just grew and grew. And somewhere along the line, I remember seeing a photographer. I was out on a field trip somewhere, and I saw a photographer, and he got this tripod, and he'd sort of nailed a flat plate on top of it, and had his laptop balancing on top, and he was trying to plug his camera into it. And I looked at him and went, "What are you doing?" He went, "Well, I shoot tethered a lot, and it's difficult for me when my camera's on, underneath the tripod, and I can't get to the controls, and I can do it through the tethering software. It's like Capture One or whatever it was back then." And he went, "But nobody makes a thing that does this." So that's what I did. I built a tripod, which we called the ePod. And then we did a second version called the ePod Diversity that was designed purely for studio photographers for tethering.
Right.
And it sold really well, and it just gave me this idea. I just went, you know what? I've been selling lighting for 5 years now, and it's probably a little bit too niche. Like, there's so few people in photography that actually buy lighting.
Yeah.
Comparatively, I mean, you know, you look at you buy a camera, the next purchase is strap, bag, tripod.
Yeah.
That's just how it goes. And I knew a bit about tripods because I'd done a couple, so I thought, I'm gonna start a tripod company. I had no aspirations for it to be what it is now, none whatsoever. It was a website. We brought out 4 or 5 models. We were a bit quirky. We were the first people to introduce color to tripods. I mean, back before then, they were all black. And 6 months after we launched, our niche went. I mean, I went to a show in Shanghai, and it was like an explosion in an M&M's factory. There were just brightly colored tripods everywhere. And that's when, that's when we sort of honed it down. That's when there was no real science in the early days of three-legged thing. Like, we made some really good tripods. Most of it was, I'm not going to say off the shelf because that's not quite correct, but we based our designs on existing designs that tripod manufacturers had made in China, and then made some changes, the number of sections, how long the sections were, added, you know, a few bits. Like, we stuck multiple section center columns. We were the first people to do that. We put color, we anodized the ball heads, different colors and things. And that really was the starting point. And as soon as I knew that I had something, I said the first year we only did £225,000, something like that. And it was like year 2 when I got a phone call. I got a phone call from this Jewish guy called Yoel Berkowitz, who works at a little photographic store in New York, little parochial store called B&H.
B&H, yeah.
I'd never heard of it. I had no idea. And he phoned here, and he was like, hello, is this Danny? And I was like, yes. That's a terrible impression of Yoel. You've met Yoel, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And he'll forgive me for trying to do that impression. And he's just like, so I'd like to buy your tripods. And I went, well, just if you go to our website, they're right there. You can just press a button and we'll deliver it. And he was like, no, I want to buy them to sell them. And I went, right, well, you can still buy them on the website and you can sell them to whoever you want. And my staff are like waving their hands at me going, no. And I'm like, hold, please. I'm sorry, what? They were like, that's B&H. And I had to Google it. I was like, well, were we Googling back then? I might have Binged it or Yahoo'd it. I don't know. Yeah. And this massive store in New York wanted to buy my tripods, and it changed everything. It literally changed everything. We went from website only to 22 countries in like 6 months or something like that. And then that's, like I said, we started honing it. Then that's when we stopped doing all the bright colors. We started working on our own color scheme, the bronze and blue. You know, the basic principle of that is you look at we use copper accents. So we use the bronze that you can see is the top of the at the top of the column there is our patented tri-mount plate. But the bronze and the blue were really representative of the planet. If you look at the planet Earth from the International Space Station, 2/3 of it's that color blue, and the other third is the sort of browny green color. So we wanted something that had natural Pantones. I mean, you know, black is not a color that exists in nature, so we weren't really sure why everybody was doing theirs black. And the orange was just me being a bit blingy. And we've taken it to a new level. I mean, the new Legend stuff, when I had the idea for putting the window, the view window in, everybody in the shed were like, really? And I was like, yeah, how cool. Because you can never see those parts normally. So they're just machined aluminium. There's nothing dressed about them. They're not even, you know, we don't do anything with them at all. They're just, they're not rough because they have to be tumbled, so they're not got any sharp edges, but they're very dull, unfinished aluminium components on the inside. And as soon as I decided to put the window in, we changed the pins to stainless steel, and anodized all the aluminium parts about it. And interestingly, because we changed them to stainless steel, suddenly the load capability it's our basic head mechanism that we've adopted for about 7 or 8 years. The load capability almost tripled just by using a harder metal, because you don't get any of that. There's no sort of flex in the There's not really much flex in metal anyway, but there are degrees of flex. And stainless steel is so rigid and so hard that we ended up with just a much better mechanical grip on that.
You improved the tripod just because you wanted to show a little window on the side of it. And
most of our, I mean, look, most of our big patents and most of the innovations that we have are like really solid foundations for the way we've changed the way people look at tripods nowadays. I mean, we were the first people to create a tripod that channeled the air the way helical strakes do on a windmill. So if you imagine a windmill, when they first came out, this is true. This is these electric wind farms you see.
Yeah.
The windmills had a massive problem because they require the wind to hit them in order to generate the electricity. That's what they're doing. Yeah. But as soon as the wind hit them, they started to vibrate horrendously. They made awful humming noises, but really loud kind of oscillation, like licking your finger and run it around the ring of a wine glass, but magnified by a million. And then somebody created what they call a helical strake, which was almost like a helter-skelter, like a strip of metal that ran round the windmill and enabled the air to channel down and stopped it from whistling. It stopped the whole vibration. And actually, one of the core principles of engineering is with tripods is almost all, there are a few that aren't, but almost all of the big name tripods have cylindrical tubing for exactly that reason, because it allows the air to pass it better. But with our new Legends range, we've actually hollowed out parts of the canopy on top, and there's little fins. It's quite a lot of work to explain, but essentially we've channeled the air in such a way that it runs up and through and stops the whole thing from vibrating. So we've created an area, like an element of rigidity that didn't even exist.
So if I'm out shooting a big landscape in a really windy Scottish part of the world and it's blown a gale, then you've designed it to as much as possible minimize the vibration that the wind would cause on the legs and the elements of the tripod itself.
And of course, look, your tripod is your sharpest lens, and it always will be. And I've always believed, the reason I started Three-Legged Things is because I had 6 tripods and I really just wanted one. But I couldn't find one that would do everything I needed it to do. And the whole principle of the brand was to start building stuff that had this sort of kind of multi-dimensional aspect to it. But the thing is, tripods have got lighter and lighter and lighter, and to some detriment, actually. I mean, we make some amazing tripods that are really, really light. If you go back to the sort of late 80s when you got brands like Benbow, the original Benbow tripods, I mean, they became a wheelbarrow factory because they were just making this solid metal tubing. Well, those tripods, I mean, if they fell over and hit you, they'd kill you, but they were rock solid because they weighed about 15 kilos. They'd break your back to get to a cliff edge, but they were so solid. And
wasn't the whole bent bolt thing the part of like a machine gun tripod rig originally? Was that not where that came from?
Probably, yeah. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
Incredible. It had just had legs that just folded out in a really weird way.
I think it was a military machine gun tripod originally or something.
It wouldn't surprise me. But see, back then, and that's what they did. I mean, you go to any studio in the 80s and 90s, and they used to have studio stands. Rather than use tripods, they had a stand that had this, this thing that slid up and down with your camera, 2 mounting points, weighed an absolute ton.
Yeah.
I mean, they're hugely weighted to minimize any of that. And of course, we've moved on from that. I mean, we've got some serious carbon fiber going on now. We use a Japanese product called Skyflex Prepreg, which is incredible quality and incredibly light. And the compromise there is that you end up being so light that in inclement weather conditions, you do run the risk of losing a bit of stability. So we built a little bit of weight back in. We added some bulk to the leg locks, add some weight in there so that that lowers the center of gravity a little bit, and it creates a bit more rigidity and stability. And actually, having leg locks that wide, you get more grip, more torque, and so the tighter you can close it up, the more rigid the whole thing becomes. So there were lots of these little mechanical changes that we brought into it that had huge impacts on the stability of the product. And then as we were working towards the Legends range, we had these ideas for you can't really see on this picture, but there's little fins above where the leg latches are that are designed so that as the air hits it, they actually create downforce. They push the tripod into the ground. That's the whole point. It's how effective. It's very difficult to test these. We're quite lucky here. We've got Cranfield University just around the corner, the Impact Test Centre, which is where they test all the Formula One monocoques, and we've got Tom Walkinshaw's old wind tunnel, the Red Bull Racing wind tunnel, just around the corner here. So there's lots of places we can go to test these sorts of things. Yeah, you can see on this picture, just above where the leg latch is, there's a little scoop out.
This here?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that was brought about. Rob, my chief engineer, and I was sat down. We're trying to work ways of creating that sort of helical strake effect. We couldn't put a metal ridge around the edge of the tube in. That would have been impractical, and we could have only done it on the top section because the other sections have to fold into it. But that was one of the things we came up with. And while we're there, we make it look a bit sexy.
Yeah, some cool. As I say, we've already looked at this. I remember the conversation with you when you first came out, and all the people were going on about your colours, and you commented to me saying, look around nature, there is no black in nature. And it was quite a realization that colour maybe is less visible than black.
Well, if you look, I mean, even there's lots of industrial applications for off black. So you look at military clothing when they're working at night, and we're talking sort of special forces stuff. You see them on TV and they're all in black with the black. It's not black, it's grey, because black would just stand out. It's so black is. I'm trying to think of the right word for it, but
Dominant.
you see it is so dominant, and it's so obvious when you walk outside. Black is a complete absorption of light.
Yeah.
Or absence of light. That's what it basically is. And so if you see anything that looks black, it can't be black, because otherwise it would be absorbing all the light, or there'd be an absence of it. So we just, even if you look at our carbon there, we don't put stripes on the carbon, nothing that might detract from just sort of the natural color of these things, keeping them gray, etc. We try and avoid using blacks. And even where we do have blacks on our tripods, because there are elements of, like, you can see the knobs there and the clamp and stuff. It's actually not black. It's a really dark grey.
Yeah. Tim made a little comment here. Really is the most sexy tripod out there.
And our products are pretty sexy too. He was talking about me, right? I'm just kidding. I know that name, Tim Moynihan. Why do I know Tim from?
Yeah. He's having a right old chat in here. He's posted some questions which I'm going to get to.
Go on then.
Well, he actually asks, he corrected his spelling. He says when, but he spelt it why. But when are you releasing the three-legged thing clothing range? He wants.
Interesting. Do you know what? We nearly, about 3 years ago, we were going to do an April Fool's, the three-legged thong. And then just the little voice in the back of my head went, "Oh, Danny, really?" It was tempting. What I would say is that the idea in principle is not one that's been overlooked by us. It won't be part of the three-legged thing legacy, but certainly as the team here is a conversation that has happened.
Yeah.
And we do bring out, we've got loads of t-shirts. I mean, I don't know if I spin my camera.
Okay, yeah.
We've got all the generations of t-shirts up on the.
Yep.
We've launched loads, and we've currently got the Ray Barbie t-shirt, which is available on our website.
Yeah.
And with any of our tripods.
Cool. Well, as a brand who loves to have their own clothing and lots of t-shirts, we're with you on.
I've got a couple of your hoodies.
A couple of hoodies, yeah. We don't sell them though. These are for staff and for people we really like. So I don't know how you got one, but
I've got two. You gave me two. Imagine that.
Must have been under the influence of some alcohol or something to give you them. So this is kind of where you've got to with the tripods, with some of your latest releases. Tell us a little bit about what we're looking at here.
This is the top of Nikki or Tommy. It's very difficult to tell from this picture which one of it is because they're both identical on the top. But I wanted, we've never brought out like what we call the big boys. You know, these big landscape photographer type tripods or studio tripods, if you were, and nothing really for video until the Legends range came out. And we brought out Mike and Jay last year with the leveling base built into the tripod, which went down really well. And you just showed a picture of that with the Airhead Cine on it.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to bring out a tripod that had interchangeable Boland flat plate mounts. And we got two options there. We got Nikki and Tommy. One's 4 sections with 32mm as the widest tubing, and the other one's 3 sections with 35mm. I think Tommy is the one that's 35mm. And I remember when I was first designing this plate on top, and I sat down with Rob and I went, we've done the spider web, because I probably designed this 2 or 3 years ago, and we only just brought it to market. It was supposed to come out earlier in the year, and the whole COVID thing happened, and we pushed it back because the Ray and Bucky launch got pushed back. But we've been sitting on this for a long time, and when I had the idea that any of the plates and bowls should actually be spider webs, I remember Rob's face lighting up, and he went, "I'm so going to design the shit out of that." And so I did a sketch and sent it over to him. Rob's my chief engineer. He doesn't work at the shed. He's based up in Mansfield. But then he came down and we spent a couple of days working on this. We were genuinely excited by it. And actually, the one thing I absolutely love about what we've managed to, and this is not just me, this is my whole team. I love my team. I like my family. The one thing we've created here as a business is that quite often when you buy something online and you receive it, there's always an element of, is it as good quality? Is it like, quite often the pictures, the pack shots are much better than the product. And that is absolutely the opposite of what people are experiencing with our products. They tend to take it out the box. I mean, there are so many unboxing videos of our products because people get so excited when they take it out. They look and they go, holy shit, look at this thing. And it looks awesome in that picture. Noel Reed is our pack shot photography, does all of our product shots and has done for a few years. Great guy, lives in Milton Keynes. He's a commercial photographer that I found and just, he's so good at what he does. And when these shots came in, and it was only 6 months ago or so, I think he did them. I just remember looking at it going, that's it, that's the one. And you can interchange that plate on top. You can take it out and put a flat plate there as well. So that's,
if you don't want to use
for
the
video,
ball.
but if you want to use it for normal photography and put normal ball heads or gimbals, whatever else on the edge, put a flat plate in there.
Cool. We should talk about this. You mentioned your t-shirts, but you're also very well known for all your artwork. I mean, we just have to look behind you with the backdrop that you have behind you there.
Mount Rushmore.
Mount Rushmore. So tell me about artwork. Was this, music's played a huge part in everything you've done, right? So, the naming of your tripod and then also the artwork is really, really cool.
Yeah, so the artwork came about because one of my staff back then had I think it was her boyfriend's cousin was an artist called Phil Bruce, and he was looking for work, and we thought we might do something a bit funky, and he said to us, you know what, I'll do you 4 bespoke bits of artwork for 500 quid. And that's one of them. So that was the first one. That was, and I came up with the concepts and sent them over to him and said, this is what we're looking for. And that was, I really wanted this sort of global domination thing. So we took a kind of War of the Worlds theme and turned the War of the Worlds tripods into actual tripods. And that was we called that the London scene. That was our first ever bit of artwork. So Phil Bruce did 4 or 5 artworks for us. Then one of the young lads that used to work for me, Chris Clark, he was one of our warehouse guys, just randomly one day said, can I draw a picture for you? And I was like, sure. And he did the Mount Rushmore. I was like, how have you kept that from us for like a year and a half, that you've got this artistic ability? Yeah. So these are all Phil Bruce's ones that you've shown there. And that was the first one that Chris did, our young warehouse lad. And I love this bit of artwork, which is why it's on a big tapestry behind me. I think it's just a really cool bit of fun. And we just brought them out as, once every 3 or 4 months we bring out a new bit of artwork, and we just different concepts and different ideas. And initially the whole point was to take famous places and turn them into tripod landscapes. That's another Chris Clark one. You know, and turn them into scenes. And then we started doing fun stuff like this. I mean, this will appear in our newsletters, I'm sure, in the next month as we head towards Christmas. That is mine. That was the original Three-Legged Thing logo. When I came up with the idea for Three-Legged Thing, I thought we need a logo, and that was the original logo that I drew. And then Phil Bruce turned it into the logo that it is now.
Yeah, this incredible artwork.
Yeah, it's amazing actually. And the guy that did these was actually the cousin of Nathan from Fuji. I think there was a bit of he introduced us, and we used him for several years. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. It reminds me a lot, you know, as we mentioned, our love of the band Iron Maiden, and used to wait patiently for the album cover coming and looking for all the little stories within the album cover, and you've really taken it to
we did album covers, but this was one of my favorite series. I actually spoke to the guys. There was a 1920s comic book called Amazing Stories, and I spoke to them and I said, look, I love the covers of these sci-fi covers. I said, can we do like a sort of tribute to them? And they were like, as long as you don't use the word amazing, we're okay with that. So we basically took some, if you actually type in Amazing Stories into Google and have a look at just click on images, you will see these pictures that we've got coming up here. We've changed them to have tripod heads, and of course it's called Awesome Tripods, but we've based them loosely on what these original sort of 1920s, 1930s. Yeah. Then we started getting towards the 80s there, and Mike did that for us. That was our Photokina 2018 t-shirt, I think, the Space Invaders. Yeah, we didn't use that one, and I probably should have taken it off the website. Yeah. This is the bit that got pretty exciting for me. I wrote to Andy Airfix, who did the Hysteria album cover for Def Leppard. And just said, look, this is what we do. This is the kind of company are. Do you mind if we do a kind of our version of your thing? Yeah. And he was like, well, let me see it when you've done it. And so we did it and sent it across to him, and his reply was just, oh my God, that's awesome. And it's so exciting to get that kind of feedback. And we did that. We did Storm Thorgerson one, which was the Dark Side of the Moon. Yeah, that's me. I did that one. That's one of the few bits of artwork that I've done for us, which relatively easy to do. We've got, so what you can't see is on the other side of the camera here is another one of these walls that's got that on it. And that's from a 9 Inch Nails DVD. I just quite liked it as a concept, so I turned it into this sort of tripod coming down with the strands of thing hanging down it. Abbey Road, yeah, we never used that one either. We never got around to sort of public. Not all of them quite pass muster. I mean, they're great ideas, and you sort of look at them as you go along, and go, "Oh, does that really work for us?" But the latest ones I actually love, because all the Legend stuff's named after skateboarders. That's why we got the Ray Barbie artwork and the Bucky Lasek artwork and that stuff. So
it's awesome. There's one of our ambassadors is in the chat, Connor McNeil over in Belfast, and he says, I use a three-legged thing. I think I may have connected you to. I use a three-legged thing. One of the first Brians, lasted me many, many years, and it's almost still alive.
Amazing. Do you know what? We in the last couple of years, we've been sort of, we don't get many returns, but and especially for the early stuff just, I don't know whether it's because we didn't sell enough for there to be sort of an element of returns regularly. Mm-hmm. But of course, the more successful you get, the more stuff you're selling, the more stuff tends to come back to you. But we ended up having to buy stuff back from people because we didn't have any legacy. Like I didn't have one of the original Bryans or the agents. Yeah. So we've been slowly sort of building it back. I think we've got everything now, but yeah, the first Bryan was groundbreaking for us. It really did. Yeah. You've still got one, haven't you?
I have got one. I've got a Winston.
Oh no, I thought you had a Bryan before that. Did you not? And you've got a Winston. So that would have been 2016. So not anywhere near the first ones.
Right, your audio's gone again. So jump out quickly and then we'll wrap things up.
Yep.
While he's joining back in to wrap things up, of course, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell notification. That way you'll be notified whenever we do another episode here of SmugMug Live. And Danny is back with me, so hey.
If they ever come back after this one.
Yeah, no, they'll come. There's always a few hiccups. Tim Monahan wrote back with another question. How do you decide the names of your tripods? Are they friends and family of yours? You should do a comp where you can name a tripod.
We did do a comp. So the first one we called Brian. We didn't. Back when I first started making them, the one thing that was consistent throughout all the stores, like you go into a shop to buy a tripod, it was like, can I have a Giotto's MC6844559? You know, the Manfrotto 190X Pro B4, or, you know, not knocking any of these as products, but
you get one number wrong, you get the wrong tripod.
Yeah, and actually the guys in the shops are just like, I'll just look that up. And so we were sort of trying to come up with names, for, you know, sort of good product names. And actually, I think Jess just said, let's just call it Brian. And it was so hilarious.
I'm Brian, and so's my wife.
And that was it. I was just like, that's it. We're calling it Brian. And then we started giving the name. So Brian was after Brian May. We did have Queen in the background at the time when that was named. The first four were called Brian, Adrian, Kirk, and Eddie. So Kirk after Kirk Hammett, Eddie after Eddie Van Halen, Adrian Smith from Iron Maiden. Yeah, no, well, it wasn't. It was 10 years ago.
Yeah, I know, but
it's no, it is sad. It is sad. So then the next lot after that, we had a few more musicians. We had Tony after Tony Iommi, and we had Frank after Frank Zappa. There's a couple more in Eric after Eric Clapton. Jack after Jack Black, actually, completely randomly, just because, fun enough, he uses one of our tripods. We saw him buying one in Sammy's in California somewhere. Yeah, in LA he was. Anyway, so we then moved on to Pioneers for the next range, the Pro range. We moved on to Pioneers. So we had like various evolutions of the Brians and Eddies and whatever else. And that's when we went for Albert, Winston, and Leo after Albert Einstein, Winston Churchill, and Leonardo da Vinci. And Winston, you know, on reflection, being a horrible racist and slightly bigoted, might not have been a great idea, but he was a fantastic statesman, and is very well known. And we really were just looking for slightly inspirational names. It seemed a bit weird to call to call a tripod Winston or Albert, but they've been stalwarts of our portfolio. Like they're, you know, big selling products. Lots of people use them, and the latest ones are all named after skateboarders. So we've got.
There you go.
Oh, and you've got the Punks range. Sorry, the Punks range is back to music again, where you've got the likes of Corey, after Corey Taylor from Slipknot, and you've Travis Barker, Blink-182, Patti Smith, Brian again. We walked Brian back, and Billy. And you can choose which Billy that is.
Any Billy
Idol, Billy Ocean,
Billie Eilish. I actually seen a photograph of Brian May holding a Brian tripod. Is that right?
No, he was holding a Keith tripod. So that was amazing.
Well,
that's wrong. That was right. That picture you showed earlier of me photographing Paul Harris photographing Biffy Clyro.
Yep.
I was stood on that table, and Brian May and Roger Taylor walked in, and I was chatting to Al Murray. You remember Al? I say remember Al Murray, still live and kicking. Yeah, pub landlord.
The pub landlord.
We were chatting because I hadn't seen him for a while, and we'd gigged together a few times. We were having a chat in the corner, and he'd handed the award, the Kerrang Award, Lifetime Achievement, whatever, to Brian May and Roger Taylor, and he was just going, "This is an amazing experience. I've met these guys and whatever." And then Brian May walked over to me and he went, "What camera are you using?" And I was like, I'm on a D3S, and he was like, "Oh, I've just bought the new 5D3," and I was like, "Oh, right." We're having a bit of a chat about photography, and then I remembered that we'd named our first ever tripod, and I went, "Stay there." It must have been quite scary, like and I like, "Do not move." Ran over, grabbed my I had a think tank roller, opened it up, pulled out his tripod, and went, "Oh, bollocks!" bollocks, it's not Brian. Brian, he's Keith. And then tried to, I mean, he must have just been going, oh my God.
What is going on?
Trying to explain, we named one of these after you, but this isn't it. This is Keith. But can I get you holding Keith? Can I get a picture of you holding Keith? So I did.
Almost the perfect moment, but you had the wrong tripod.
Yeah. It would have been. And I did say to him, I said, look, let me send you a tripod, because he's big into all that sort of stuff, and he likes doing his astral photography and he was like, yeah, here's the card for my assistant, whatever, and he gave me her card, and I think that was his way of saying not through me. So yeah, Brian, if you're listening, which you're probably not, there's a tripod here with your name on it.
Yeah,
literally.
There's tripods all over the world with your
There's
name
actually
on
about 2,000 in the shed next door. Yeah, with your name on it.
Yeah, we've mentioned Connor McNeil, who's in the chat window, great ambassador of SmugMug, who uses your tripod. We mentioned John Rourke, who's on your pro team. I've had a few other guests on our show who are mutual ambassadors. Brooke Shaden.
I introduced you to Brooke Shaden.
You introduced me to Brooke, yeah.
I remember how excited you were when you went, you know Brooke Shaden? I'm like, yeah, we're mates.
Great introduction. Tina Eisen is another.
I love Tina. She lives down the road. She's in Milton Keynes.
Milton Keynes, yeah. So hi, Tina, if you're listening. And Brooke and John and Connor and all the others.
You know what I love about Brooke? She's tiny. You just want to squeeze her and hug her, and you can just kind of pick her up and put her in your pocket. Go for a walk. She's so little. She's so lovely.
She's adorable and a great ambassador and a wonderful, wonderful human. So if people wanted to check out all the amazing stuff you're doing at Three-Legged Thing, I guess they go to threeleggedthing.com, correct?
Pretty much. Google it. You'll find us. It'll take you straight there.
If you want to check them out on Instagram, it's at Three-Legged Thing underneath Danny's name there.
Or Three-Legged Thing, or hashtag Three-Legged Thing will take you through to us somewhere.
Yeah, and lots of incredible tripods there. Lots of great innovations and accessories that go with the tripods, and everything's got a real cool but usable spin to it. So it's been great watching the progress over the last 10 years-ish.
We've come a long way, haven't we?
We've been through a lot together. This year's been interesting, but I really appreciate you spending the last hour and a half talking with me and letting the folks watching get a little bit of the backstory of you, your journey in this industry, and where you've got to now. And I look forward to getting back down to the chicken shed and coming to catch up with you and maybe going for a meal or something like we did last time.
The pleasure has all been mine. I'm so delighted that you even asked me to do this, despite all of the obvious warnings you had from everybody. It's been all right, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, obviously, I reached out to you and I said, Danny, we're looking for somebody really awesome to be on the show. Do you know anybody?
Anyone,
yeah. So I just decided to ask you instead. But yeah, this hasn't been the car crash that many people suggested it might be. You and I have been on our best behaviour tonight. So I'm surprised there wasn't more of that during.
I did decide to behave. I was going to give you a bit of a. Alastair was a jolly boy. I thought I wouldn't. I'm not got it in me. I can't help pressing these buttons. When you're doing your podcast, you just press them all the time.
This is my favourite one. Oh, it's not playing. Can you hear that? There you go.
Yeah.
I don't press buttons, especially when I'm live. Press as little buttons as possible when you're live. That's normally my mantra. Simon, I wish Simon Pollock had joined us because I'd asked him for lots of stories that I could tell about you, but he refused to give me any because they all incriminated him in the story.
Whatever happens in Shanghai stays in Shanghai. That's the truth. Yeah.
Well, listen, before we say our final thanks to Danny, as I said earlier, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification. That way you'll be notified whenever we release another episode here. As I mentioned at the top of the show, last one of the week, because we've got Thanksgiving that we're celebrating on Thursday here at SmugMug and Flickr. Next shows will be in December, which is next week. Isn't that scary to think about? Yeah, so 1st of December and 3rd of December, we've got shows coming up next week. So look out for information about them on our social channels. But for now, Danny, thank you so much for spending the time in the cold shed talking to me.
Thank you for listening. I really appreciate it.
I'm not sure if anybody was really listening, but I
I
enjoyed
don't
myself.
think you were even listening.
Sorry, what?
I said, I don't think even. Oh, God.
Yeah. Okay. Everybody, thank you so much. Danny, I really, really appreciate it. Wherever you are in the world, stay safe, look after each other, be kind, and we will see you back next week here on the show. Take care, everyone. Thanks, Danny.